Well, hello and welcome to the 27 Degree with Chris and Nancy, being broadcast from the BioSkills of Northeast studio in Fall River, Mass. Today we'll be discussing insurance with Patrick Long, President and CEO of Baycoast Insurance. Before we begin our conversation, I would like to thank our sponsors, Baycoast Bank. Baycoast Bank is just right for all of your financial needs. Visit baycoast.bank or call 508-678-7641 to learn more. In Duncan Hearing Healthcare you can trust, with sites in Fall River, Dartmouth, Falmouth, and Centerville. For more information, visit their website, duncanhearing.com. As always, you can support the 27 Degree with Chris and Nancy by subscribing to us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, and by following us on Facebook and Instagram. Also, please remember to leave a review, and 5-star reviews are always greatly appreciated. So, Patrick, maybe you can first start by telling us a little bit about your role and what you do, and a bit about Baycoast Insurance.
Yeah, sure. I really appreciate it, Chris. Thank you, Nancy, for having me on.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I'm here. I'm the president and CEO of Baycoast Insurance, and Baycoast Insurance is a local 5-star insurance agency serving our community. So that 5-star designation was actually awarded to us by the Massachusetts Association of Insurance Agents.
Oh.
And less than 2% of agents in Massachusetts have earned that designation.
That's
so
great.
So that's a
it is a
legit
testament.
5-star.
It's a legit 5-star,
That's
yeah,
cool.
the real deal. It's a testament to the talented people that we have working with us at Baycoast Insurance and our commitment to excellence. You know, always striving to be a little bit better. I was thinking about when I was preparing to come in and speak with you. I was reminded of how doctors practice medicine and attorneys practice law, right? And I'd say that insurance agents practice insurance. It's an ever-changing industry, and we're always thinking of evaluating new products and creating solutions that are both affordable and appropriate for different people's situation. And that's one of the beauties of the insurance industry, is that, Nancy, we were talking about it earlier, everybody's situation is a little bit different.
Right.
You know? And
Right.
whether it's, somebody's home and somebody has a cape and their neighbor has a ranch. Somebody has a Rottweiler and their neighbor has a trampoline.
Right.
Or everybody's situation is a little bit different. And that's what I really love about the insurance industry, is the opportunity to get to meet people, the opportunity to get to understand businesses, and create a solution that suits both their exposure and their budget. And Baycoast Insurance is really, really good at that. So
That's great.
my role is the president and CEO of Baycoast Insurance, and I have the honor of working with about 60 individuals throughout 8 different branches, and we try to meet the needs of the community members that we serve. You know, everybody's got insurance.
Yes.
It renews once a year. And we would really be honored at Baycoast Insurance for the opportunity to earn that business. So my job, if I had to break it down, is to meet the mission and the vision of Baycoast Insurance, to drive and support a culture that is second to none. Like I said earlier, like I'm genuinely honored to work with 60 individuals that are much cooler, much better, much smarter than me. I just have the opportunity to sort of lead the organization.
And you've been there a long time. You've been there 17 years.
Yeah,
That's a long
17
time
glorious
for someone
years.
to be in an organization.
Yeah.
So
But it went by
that
really
must
fast.
mean something, the fact
Yeah.
that you stayed there as long as you did.
It gets better every day, Chris. I work with some amazing people at the insurance agency, but I also have the opportunity to work with some really, really great people at the bank as well. You know, we're going to get into, I assume later on in this interview, the fact that we changed our name in January of last year from Partners Insurance Group to Baycoast Insurance.
Okay.
And that's because being part of the Baycoast organization is something that I'm genuinely proud of. You know?
That's a great bank.
It's a great bank, and more than that, more than being, a financial institution, it's a steward in the community. You know, it's leading by example, and I'm proud to be part of Baycoast Bank, working at the insurance.
They are unique in that they are very involved with the community, and they support, of course, our show, which is a testament to that.
Yeah,
So they're all
genuine.
about education and supporting those around the community of Fall River, which is great.
You know what I thought was really cool when I was looking over the content we were going to do for the show is how many service lines you have, how many different types of insurances you do. And I'm like, so for our listeners, what we're going to be getting into is like personal insurance,
Right,
business insurance. RMV, are you kidding me? That's
Yeah.
crazy. A little bit, Chris has a CBD company, so he's going to ask you a couple of little questions there. But
Right.
just like, I'm certainly interested in even like the difference between term life, whole life, like long-term care insurance, and all that. And the RMV, you need to highlight that because I was
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, definitely.
And you have 8 offices.
We do, yeah. Throughout southeastern Mass and Rhode Island, we have 3 here in Fall River, Somerset, Swansea, as far west as Seekonk, as far east as Fairhaven, and one in Tiverton as well.
That's great. So you're multi-state, Tiverton and Mass.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And your headquarters is in Swansea,
Correct, yeah.
the Baycoast Bank building, I'm assuming.
My office is actually in on Wilbur Avenue, which
Okay.
is just a stone's throw from the bank building, but we do have a presence within the bank building as well.
Okay, great.
Nice. So can you start talking just about what kind of insurances you do offer?
Yeah. The list is pretty long, Nancy,
Yes.
but if I had to break it down, I would probably break it down into 3 categories. I would say, first off, personal insurance.
Yep.
And that's your homeowner's insurance, your auto insurance.
Okay.
You could throw a myriad of different products into that as well, but
Right.
I'd lead with home and auto and umbrella insurance,
Yep.
your boat insurance, your pet insurance, the list goes on, right? And then the second category would be commercial insurance, and that's for every business in the communities that we represent. Your convenience store, your doctor, your
Right.
attorney, your manufacturer, your wholesaler. The list goes on. All the commercial exposures within the communities that we serve. And then that last bucket would probably be life accident and health insurance. And you had mentioned that earlier. And that could apply to both personal and commercial insurance, but
Right.
I like to consider it a separate category.
Yeah, I'm looking through this list, and it's actually
crazy,
it's
isn't it?
so extensive.
It's like everything you could think of, they do.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
pretty
that's
much
basically it.
everything that I think I would ever be interested in
Right?
with
Right.
insurance. I love the fact that you have pet insurance.
I know.
because
I had that
I thought that was
highlighted,
very
too.
specialized to just a handful of companies that offered over the internet, basically.
There are limited companies that offer it, but it's one of those arrows in our quiver that
Yeah.
we have. Not a whole lot of people take advantage of it, to be completely honest with you.
And what's like the nutshell definition of like the pet insurance? And do you have to get it when like the like your little pet's like a puppy?
No, you don't have to get it when the pet is a puppy. But like anything else, well, you can't buy homeowners insurance while the house is burning down,
Right. Right.
and it's going to cost you more for a house built in 1800 on the coast than it is for a brand new house in an inland community. So I guess what I'm getting at is pet insurance for a 12-year-old dog is probably going to cost you a little bit more than pet insurance for a puppy.
And what does pet insurance cover?
Typically, every policy is a little bit different.
Sure.
So you can't really paint that broad
What
brush.
can it
but
cover, I guess?
If the pet gets sick,
Okay.
that's when it kicks in.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So now, if we talk about, I'm going to switch gears on
Go
you.
ahead.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to be switching gears on you through
Perfect.
the whole
I
podcast.
appreciate it.
So let's talk a little bit about life insurance. One thing I've always been kind of confused on is term life versus whole life. And
a
I've
good
always
question.
heard, oh, don't buy whole life. It's like a bad thing to do. Always get your term. It's less expensive, especially if you're older. Like
I have whole life
guy.
policies. I have term life policies too. I mean, it depends. One I think of as more like an investment vehicle to some extent, but you can explain
You're right.
that a little more.
Yeah. First, I want to know who said don't buy
Yeah.
whole life insurance.
it's a very popular financial guru that I listen to.
Oh, yeah.
On the-
That guy.
That guy.
Okay. If I had to explain it simply, and there are a million different types of policies, but the simple difference between whole life insurance and term life insurance is for a specified period of time. Maybe you buy a 20-year term policy, whereas whole life is permanent. So that term life insurance policy, say you could get $1 million of coverage for $1,000 a year, But after 20 years, you go your separate ways. Versus a whole life insurance policy. Like I said, there's a million different kinds of whole life insurance policies, but in general, that policy is permanent. So you could get a whole life insurance policy that you pay for 20 years, but after 20 years, the coverage still continues. And also with a whole life insurance policy, it builds cash value every year. So I like whole life insurance. I feel like whole life insurance should be the foundation of any sound investment plan. And you can tell that to that financial guru that you speak with.
Actually,
not on first name
my
basis.
financial advisor said the same thing.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of like what's out there now. I feel like with the interactions that I've had with this subject. You know?
And it's I'm glad that you asked, because it's not necessarily top of mind for a 20-something or a 30-something that's just starting their career and maybe doesn't have a whole lot of extra liquid cash. It's not necessarily top of mind.
Right.
But for those individuals that do secure a nice whole life insurance policy while they're young, like anything else, like that dog we were talking about earlier, right? It's
when they
more
don't
and
have
more
diabetes
affordable.
yet and everything else,
And you take it with you.
I like the fact that there's the investment component too, which is nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can also borrow against most
Right,
whole
you
life
can borrow, you
insurance
get,
policies.
low interest loans and that.
Yeah.
So there are some benefits to
You
it.
can make collateral assignments. If you go into a business venture and you can assign
What's
a
a
bank.
collateral assignment?
Say you were to get a loan from a bank. Say you borrowed $1 million from the bank.
Oh, under Chris's name, awesome.
And there you go. Often the banks would say, all right, but what happens if you kick the bucket?
Right.
So they want a collateral assignment. And you could say, well,
okay.
I have this $1 million life insurance policy.
Oh.
I'll assign you as the beneficiary bank,
Oh,
and that could meet your obligation. So it makes sense to get it
right.
while you're healthy.
I mean, that can come in handy a lot of different ways. I imagine that can kind of come into play if you're buying a house. Too,
Absolutely.
And you
Yeah.
have that. That's
Yeah, I
cool.
mean, think about it. Your kids are going to college and you have a whole life policy you can borrow against. You can take money out on that. There's so many different ways.
And
you can
actually,
use
that's
it.
probably a lot better because, I hear a lot of people when their kids are going through college, they're borrowing against their retirement plan
Right.
and getting penalized because
There you
they
go.
haven't met that age. So this carries no penalty with it.
And I'm not saying that I'm opposed to term life insurance either. I have term life insurance as well.
Right.
But I like them both for different reasons.
Right. I agree.
And now the other thing that I guess I'm just going to throw some myths at you.
Yeah.
Like if I'm single, I don't need insurance. Like I don't have anyone that's going to get
You mean life
harmed
insurance.
by life insurance. That's going to be harmed by my death. And it's only if I have kids that I need to think about insurance. So can you talk a little bit about when it's like those really optimal times that, you really do have to think about insurance and kind of what's the rule of thumb as to amounts?
It depends who you ask, and everybody's situation is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And just because you don't need it today doesn't mean that you're not going to need it tomorrow. And what's important to Chris might not be what's important to you or important to me. Everybody's appetite is a little bit different, and I respect that. So at Baycoast Insurance, we give everybody the freedom to make their own decision.
Nice.
But it needs to be an educated decision. So you need to understand, well, first, what would it cost, right? Because you can't make an educated decision if you don't know what it costs. Are we talking about $1,000 expense or are we talking about $100 expense?
Right.
Right.
And there's a million different solutions for a million different situations. And if people ever want to have those conversations, at least we can give them the answers that they need
Yes.
in order to make an educated
I
decision.
mean, it sounds like you personalize the whole approach. It's not
Yeah.
like a cookie cutter approach.
Yeah.
It's nice that that's how you do approach it.
And then you don't have like just one type of product from one type of company. Like you're just looking and you're really vetting like all these products.
Yeah,
for
we have
someone.
dozens and dozens of insurance companies that we represent, both
So
in the
that's
standard
nice,
market and in the excess and surplus lines market, as well as life accident and health business. The companies that we do business with are A-rated companies. So we do go through the necessary due diligence to make sure that the companies that we do partner with are A-rated within AM Best.
And I would say for those single young guys out there or gals out there, Like if you're not invincible, and God forbid you ever do kick the bucket. I mean, someone has to carry that burial cost.
Yeah, you're right.
So, like, and speaking of that, as a parent, if I have kids in their 20s or early 30s that don't carry insurance, and this is morbid, right? It's a morbid conversation, but can I get out a life insurance policy on my kids?
With their permission.
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
I have life insurance. My boys are 9 and 11, and I have life insurance policies on both of them. Whole life insurance policies with guaranteed insurability. So when they're older, say they do come down with diabetes or something that prohibits or limits the amount of insurance that they can get, they're locked in with a guaranteed insurability on their.
That's a
whole life.
smart move. Look
And it's
at
like
you.
$200 a year. It's great. It's relatively inexpensive.
That's cool.
I never thought about that concept, but that makes a lot of sense.
It seems a little bit morbid to buy life insurance on like your infant child, but it's the responsible and
But you're actually investing in their future more than anything else. That's how I would look at it.
absolutely
Right.
it builds cash value. Like
Right. Right.
they can do with it what they please once they can make that educated decision.
Right. No, that's great.
I'm going to slip in. I want to cover a few more topics under the personal insurances.
Great.
So, not a lot of people think of apartment insurance either, but that comes into play, especially now when people are struggling to get into homes.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, it's relatively inexpensive to get renter's insurance.
Nice.
And anybody who's renting an apartment should have renter's insurance.
Makes sense.
That in tandem with the fact that, and I think that we're going to discuss it a little bit later, but you had mentioned the commercials that you see on TV and the bundle and save
Yes.
philosophy.
Yes.
So typically, say you save 20% on your home insurance and your renter's insurance, it's almost like you're getting that renter's insurance policy for free. So
Oh, yeah.
anybody who's renting should absolutely explore it because it's probably more affordable than they might think, and they should approach it from the bundle and save like philosophy.
Okay.
And regardless of if they could not have a car, they could ride a bicycle, and they should still get a renter's insurance policy. And I've had situations, I've walked through apartments or homes for that matter, or commercial buildings for that matter, where people have lost everything that they own. And to think that they took the time and they were responsible enough to make the decision to spend a couple $100 on a renter's insurance policy, you feel pretty good after that devastating fire.
Yeah.
And that's just from a property standpoint, but renter's insurance policies also come with liability insurance as well.
Let me ask you a question in relation to that. We all have a lot of things in our house or our apartments. Do you walk around with a video camera or now a cell phone and record what you
could.
have?
Yeah, you certainly could.
Is that one way to record it? Because, people aren't going to write down every item they have.
But take an inventory.
Yeah, an inventory. What's the best way to do that?
I think that would be a great practice. Most people don't do it.
Okay.
But it would be a great idea to do it. Maybe once a year. I might put that in my repertoire and use that.
Because otherwise, you're trying to remember what you had afterwards.
Yeah,
that has to be almost impossible. You're emotionally distraught and
it's
whatnot.
challenging.
Yeah.
What are the important things to inventory? Because I'm not going to, you got 100 shoes. I'm not going to be like, okay, my pink shoes, they were like $75, whatever. Like, what do you, what's
those
important to
things that,
inventory?
if you have a collection of Louis Vuitton handbags and diamond rings and Rolex watches, and then that stuff should be scheduled on the policy.
Yeah.
And the rule of thumb that I like to use is it's typically about $10 for every $1,000 of appraised value.
Okay.
So if you have a $10,000 ring, it'll probably cost you around $100 to schedule it on
That's not bad.
your homeowner's insurance policy. Anything scheduled on your homeowner's insurance policy, you don't pay a deductible on. So it's important to understand how coverage works, and then you can make an educated decision as to what you want to schedule and what you don't want to schedule. The typical homeowner's insurance policy does come with a set limit for jewelry. So maybe they'll say, we'll pay you $5,000 for jewelry, but over and above that $5,000, they're not going to account for.
What's kind of like industry standard with that
Industry standard would be
around
around what from a
for
pricing?
jewelry? Like what they would cover? Like you had just kind of thrown out the figure like around
Yeah, like $5,000.
5,000.
Yeah, without an unendorsed homeowner's
Yes.
policy.
Yes, yes, yes.
Typically somewhere around there. Every company's a little bit different, so I can't paint that broad brush.
Yeah. No, I was just kind of curious. So then, if you have some jewelry, like if you're older and you've collected this jewelry or inherited it or whatever,
Yeah, like
the
Chris,
best thing.
older, like
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Thank you, Patrick. You're coming
We don't
back
think you were on
on
my
the
side.
show. No. We're gonna keep that in. We're not editing that out, Tyler. So then, like, what's the best way? Like, I'm just not gonna say, hey, I got like $50,000 of insurance, and can you just add it on? Like, you need proof. So, are we getting appraisals for
Yes.
that stuff?
Yeah, you're spot on. And typically your jeweler will do an appraisal for free,
Yep.
and those things that are important to you.
Mhm.
Think about like engagement rings or your
Yeah.
grandmother's earrings or your,
Right.
and that doesn't take away the fact that if something happens and they're gone, they're gone.
Right.
Right.
But that's why the appraisal is actually so important for scheduled items, because believe it or not, typically in those situations, they don't say, all right, Nancy, your engagement ring was worth $10,000. Here's a check for $10,000. They actually go to the appraisal and they say, all right, you had a 2-carat princess cut diamond ring. I don't know jewelry that well, but and then they go out and
Sounds good so far.
they find you a 2-carat princess cut
Oh.
diamond ring with exactly how it's specified, and they say,
Nice.
here's the ring.
So it's replacement.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's typically how
Nice.
scheduled items are handled.
And
particularly
like
jewelry.
that would probably be true for like artwork too. Like if you have like decent artwork in your home, you want to like kind of cull that
Absolutely.
So when it's scheduled, they're giving you the value back of what it was
Yes.
worth. Yeah. Okay.
If they can.
If they can. Okay. Right.
So the one thing I saw in your content that I was like, oh yeah, was this R&V stuff that you do.
Oh, yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
give us some broad strokes on the R&V services?
Yeah. So, how many countless hours have we all sat at the registry of motor vehicles,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
One of the services that we offer at our main office in Swansea is this R&V service. So, if you're buying a new car or anything that generates a title, we can actually issue the plates right at our office. So the dealership can send us over it's called an RTA form with all the necessary information. We can bind coverage on an insurance policy and set up all the necessary documentation and actually issue the plates within our office.
Okay.
And
Just for Mass, though, not for Rhode Island,
Correct.
right? Okay.
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
You're out of luck there, Chris.
Yeah, I know. Rhode Island's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great service, though,
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so
because
nice.
it is a hassle to do
Yeah.
all this stuff.
Well, especially if you're not buying a car like locally, it's just
Right,
like
right.
such, we're like running back and forth. It's crazy. I have another question for you too. So with I'm going to just ask you one more question about the home insurance, but then I'm going to switch over to car insurance too. With the home insurance, you had mentioned like additional like wind insurance and stuff like that. Can you talk typically about usually what's kind of covered in a this is probably going to like typical
And what is some
normal
extras that
policy,
maybe
and then
folks
what
should think about?
what people don't realize like when it's like wind damage and what their deductibles are.
So in the communities that we serve, it's not uncommon to see a wind deductible or a hurricane deductible or a named storm deductible. And, like we were discussing earlier, we want our clients to make educated decisions. We don't want anybody having a cold shower when Hurricane Bob rips through and rips the roof off the
Yes.
house. Often on a homeowner's insurance policy, I think it can be somewhat misleading, where it references this special wind deductible or named storm deductible, and it's every insurance company is a little bit different. And I'm not saying that every insurance policy has a named storm deductible, but when it is on the insurance policy, it's often referenced as a percentage. So it'll say your named windstorm deductible is 5%. And most people just sort of, let's be honest, most people don't read their homeowner's insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
But they sort of browse through it and they say, okay, 5%.
not
named
registering.
windstorm deductible.
Yeah.
5%, the deductible is 5% of the total damage.
No, see, that's
what I would think.
Most people think.
But what you're saying, they only give 5%.
The deductible is 5% of coverage A.
Okay.
So if you have $1 million house, then that becomes a pretty significant $50,000 deductible.
Yeah.
So you don't want that cold shower.
No.
You want to understand what your insurance policy covers, how the
Right.
deductibles work.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
See, I would
You know,
not have understood it.
I found that out the hard way. Yeah.
You had a situation like
Yeah. Yeah. And ours wasn't 5%. It was like 2%
2%,
back back like 10 years ago.
no, they're
And it was like, I was like,
still a lot.
what? Like we
You have
didn't,
$1 million in coverage. It's still
it was crazy.
$20,000.
it can add up. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I didn't
So it's
like that.
it's something that everybody, regardless of who they're doing business with, they should take a look at there, especially if you live in a coastal community in today's
Right.
day and age. You should look at the policy and you should ask your agent what the deductible is
Okay.
for windstorm, because in my opinion, it can be somewhat deceiving how most homeowners insurance companies reference it on the
I think
policy.
that is.
You know, it'd be
very
just like nice if you
confusing.
like gave examples. Like for instance, if you have like a $400,000 home, this is like what the deductible would be, because then you're getting it as you read.
Yeah.
And not every homeowner's insurance policy has a special wind
Right.
deductible, but a lot of
lot of them do.
companies in these coastal communities that we represent do have.
Yes. Yeah.
There are other things that every consumer should know is not covered by a standard homeowner's insurance policy. Flood insurance. Flood is not covered by a homeowner's insurance policy. You need to get a flood insurance policy. There are a few high-value homeowners insurance companies that do offer flood insurance within the homeowner's product, but in general, flood insurance is a separate insurance policy.
Okay.
Everybody should get a quote on what it would cost them to get a flood insurance policy. The natural response there is, well, I don't live in a flood zone.
But the flood
everybody.
zones have changed, though.
Yeah, and everybody
Yeah.
lives in a flood zone. Whether you live on the beach or if you live inland, your property can flood, and it's not covered by an unendorsed homeowner's policy.
If a pipe breaks, is that considered
That's
a
not
flood?
flood.
That's not flood.
No, so think of it this way:
Okay.
if
That's a
the water,
natural type.
if the water comes from the top down,
Yeah.
typically covered.
Okay.
If the water comes from the bottom up, not covered. But unless you have a flood insurance policy,
Huh.
that's a simple way to think about it.
Okay. All right.
Another thing that's not covered under the unendorsed homeowner's policy is earthquake. And I know that sounds crazy to say we could have an earthquake any day now, but I think we actually had one like a month
We
or so.
did.
had one a month
We
ago, and a
did.
couple-
Yes.
2 years ago, there was one, and we were walking our dog, and it sounded like a rocket taking off. It was
Yeah.
the weirdest thing, and the ground shook a little bit. It wasn't terrible, but everyone was very aware of it. So we are in an earthquake zone.
I would
apparently,
strongly
right?
suggest that everybody ask their insurance agent,
Right.
what would it cost me to get flood insurance on my homeowner's policy? Because that way you can make an educated decision.
You know, I think what a lot of people do is they just go for the cheapest policy, and they don't realize what it
Yeah.
covers and it doesn't
Right.
cover, right? And
Yeah.
that's a pretty standard approach for many out there.
Yeah, I think I think mainstream media has sort of trained the consumer
Right.
that
Right.
way, right?
Go
Like,
for the cheapest policy.
yeah, the 15 minutes or less, or like
Yeah.
I don't know what the taglines are all
Right.
these days, but and I like some of these creative commercials. I think
Right.
that some of them are a little bit funny,
Yeah, they
but I'm passionate about insurance,
Right.
and I don't want myself or anybody at Baycoast Insurance to be on the other end of a phone call
Yeah, right.
where something happens. These are people's lives, and
Sure.
it's very important to us to make sure that we do everything that we can to properly protect what people have worked their whole lives for, right? Everybody wants the best deal. Everybody wants to maximize the elasticity of their spend. Whether they're buying a loaf of bread or a homeowner's insurance policy, everybody wants to get the best value, but you should make an educated decision as to what's important to you.
Right.
And everybody's risk tolerance is different, and everybody's
Well, it's like probably buying a car. You don't want to buy like a real junker that's going to break down and not be dependable. And like,
some people
you
do.
know,
You know,
but then you like, well, I'll speak for myself because I know you're into cars, but like, I'm not going to spend like $3 million on a car if
I'm
I
not
just
gonna
need to
spend that on
get
a car
from
either.
point A to B.
It's a tool.
So,
That's all it is.
yes.
Everybody's different. Yeah.
So I have a question for you. I was at one of my career networking groups, and there was a lawyer there, and he was talking about car insurance. So to your point, when you said everyone's looking just to spend the minimum, he's like, you really need to increase like this and this. Just don't go for the minimum because you don't know what we see. So I think
everything, we don't spend enough time talking about that. Right. So there are a few key parts of a personal auto insurance policy that everybody should be keenly aware of. Optional bodily injury to others.
Yes.
And uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. So the optional BI to others is if you hurt somebody else, what your policy is going to pay. Right. And the mandatory limits in Massachusetts are 20/40. $20,000 per person, $40,000 per accident. Let me tell you, if you rear end somebody and you hurt them enough where an ambulance is coming to check them out, you ripped through that $20,000 before the ambulance even arrived.
Absolutely.
So nobody should have the minimum compulsory bodily injury limits because we live in a litigious society.
Absolutely.
And people get hurt.
Yep.
And it costs money to get people well.
Yeah.
So everybody should, in my opinion, and everybody's situation is a little bit different, but understand how the coverage works and ask your agent for what it would cost to increase.
And it's not that much.
Really not.
To really increase that. It's not a huge oh my God moment.
And understand the flip side of that as well. So we talked about optional bodily injury to others, and then we talked about uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. And that's if somebody hits you and they don't have the adequate limits, then your policy could pay you for their irresponsibility.
Which is more common than people think, that someone is
extremely
or uninsured.
Or uninsured.
Driving without a license, no insurance.
Yeah.
Usually those are the ones that take off after the accident.
Yeah.
But it happens all the time, right?
The other area that doesn't get enough attention on the personal auto policy is MedPay. And
what is that, Patrick?
It's basically the first coverage to respond. It's considered your no-fault coverage. And typically you have like $5,000 of MedPay coverage, but you can bump that up to $10,000, $50,000 relatively inexpensively. And few people do, but I would strongly suggest that...
I don't think I'm still clear on that.
What MedPay is?
It's considered your no-fault coverage. So it's the first coverage to respond before they go into the liability coverages.
So like my regular insurance?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Your liability coverage.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So you're not waiting for someone to make a decision as to, because insurance companies will fight over who's responsible.
Yeah.
This is just, they're not fighting. There you go.
It's the first coverage to respond.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So
it's relatively cheap too.
Yeah.
Most attorneys that are keen to liability cases associated with car accidents are keen to the importance of MedPay coverage, and I thought that's what your attorney friend was going to say.
Interesting.
You should increase your MedPay coverage.
Well, he talked about what you explained so well, just those bodily injury areas, and he's like, and he was just kind of talking off the cuff, but he's like, oh, everyone goes for the minimum, and it's just like you really need to think about that.
A lot of people do that. And I think you're right. These commercials kind of sway us to do that. Especially the ones that the new apps that are out there. You can look at at all your insurance options, and they'll find the cheapest one for you, but they don't really compare what you're getting.
Or, too, I have to say, it seems like if I was going into Baycoast Insurance, you're having a good conversation and you're sitting down and you're going through these things. I had requested a quote once and I'm like, can you price this out? And I had asked to increase the bodily injury, and it was like, really? Why? It was kind of like, I don't know. It wasn't like a warm, cozy feeling. I didn't you're not getting the education.
Cutter approach.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But I like the education piece of this.
Like I said, we're pretty passionate about it.
Yeah.
Primacare is Southeastern New England's trusted leader in medical care. With offices in Fall River and surrounding communities, we're dedicated to your well-being. Our carefully selected team of more than 150 providers offers world-class primary and specialty medical care. Primacare doctors are supported by a skilled staff trained to deliver comprehensive radiology, imaging, and testing services. Primacare is large enough to take care of all your medical needs, but small enough to care for you personally. Primacare is by your side.
When you talk about liability coverage, and we're focusing on auto insurance coverage right now, but this applies also to homeowners insurance coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's heard the term umbrella insurance, and that works just as you might think that it works. So you have your homeowners insurance and you have your auto insurance policy, and then you could get an umbrella that goes over both policies. Typically you would get like $1 million umbrella or a $5 million umbrella, so that if you pierced the liability limits on those underlying policies, if you pierced the $250,000 per person limit on your auto policy, then the umbrella kicks in with the next $1 million of coverage.
That's nice.
And the umbrella can also fall down and be the primary coverage in certain situations, but it's worth exploring.
Yeah.
Now, if someone's like listening to this podcast and they're like, oh, I think my insurance needs a little shakeup, they can just call and have like a sit down with you, and you can just review policies too, right?
Zero pressure. We would absolutely, appreciate the opportunity to get to know them, regardless of what comes of it. We would genuinely want to do the right thing. We would want to help them out. We can answer all of their questions. We can explore the market and show them what's out there. I'm a big proponent in the independent insurance agency system. I think that this is still a relationship business. It's about understanding your client. It's about understanding what's important to your client. It's about understanding what keeps them up at night, and finding a product to suit their needs. And everybody's a little bit different. So you don't know what you don't know.
Can I ask one more question about the homeowners insurance? Like sometimes if we have a little oopsie at home, we're like, oh, we don't want to call because our rates are just going to go up and they might cancel the policy on us. Can you kind of address those types of concerns?
When to put in a claim and when not to put in a claim?
Yeah.
You could have this discussion across the board, whether it's homeowners insurance or auto insurance for that matter, right? Say you have a $500 deductible and it's going to cost you $600 to repair your car.
Right.
I'm going to probably advise that you don't put the claim in, Nancy.
Right.
For that exact reason.
Right. Surcharges.
Whether the surcharge or also the impact on your claims history,
Yeah.
But again, that's a judgment call that the consumer can make an educated decision on it. If you have a $1,000 deductible on your homeowner's policy and you have a $5,000 claim, I'm probably going to say put the claim in, and we'll deal with it at renewal, and we'll find another company and we'll see what we can do. But it's there for a reason. So I don't encourage people not to use their insurance policy if they need it.
Right.
But you're right that certain situations.
Like if you drop an iron on a carpet, maybe you should just cut out that little
sounds like maybe
piece
that
and-
happens.
Maybe. long time ago.
So, looking at the personal insurance types that you offer, it's fairly extensive. Homeowners, auto, boat, life, health, flood, event, which we'll have to talk more about that, travel, and pet. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So, event insurance.
So you're throwing a wedding.
Okay.
At your or you're hosting a wedding at a venue, and they tell you that you have to get insurance, right?
Yeah.
You can get event insurance. We have it right on our website. It's super easy to get a quote. Travel insurance is just that. You're planning a big trip, and you want to get insurance in case you're in Spain and you get sick, or something goes wrong while you're on your trip.
For those who travel all the time, do they have to get a separate policy every time they travel? There's not a one. Okay, for this year I may travel 10 times. It's going to be covered. No.
There's probably such a product.
Okay.
This product that we have on our website is trip specific.
Trip specific.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's the benefit? Like a lot of times, like when you go sign up for a trip, they're like, click, like check here for like your travel insurance. Is there a benefit to going like outside?
It's very
or is
similar
it
to
very-
that. The devil's in the details.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just have to know what you're signing up for.
Yeah, I know that our product is super competitively priced, and you choose what you want and what you don't want.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Versus what I've seen out there by some of our competitors, and typically directly through the travel companies, is more of a cookie cutter approach, like you had referenced earlier.
How about long-term care insurance? Can you talk about that for
Yeah.
a moment? Because that comes up a lot. My patients ask about it here and there, and I'm not an expert on it, but it seems reasonable for many people to have based on the cost of long-term care, and particularly if they want to stay in their home and not be in a nursing home, it can add a lot of services.
We've seen it, right? Like as our parents get older,
Mm-hmm.
you like how I did that, Nancy? Not you, Chris, but as our parents get older, yeah, we've seen the burden that
Right.
long-term care is on them, and similar to the dog that we were talking about earlier, or the young adult who's starting their career, it's something that everybody should explore before they really need it, because it can get really expensive.
And a lot of those policies, they may not all be the same, but usually there's a certain waiting time. So you
Yeah.
have to, use your own funds for 3 months, let's say.
Yep.
And then after that, it kicks in. Is that how you see most of them?
Typically, yeah, you're spot on. The waiting period is almost like the deductible in a
Right.
property insurance policy.
So with long-term care insurance, like I've heard the magic number of 60 is when you should get long-term care insurance. Or what's the most common age that you see people signing up for long-term care insurance?
I couldn't really paint that broad of a brush.
Yeah.
It's much younger. I think it's more expensive the older you get.
Yeah,
But then you're paying every month too.
Yeah,
So you always
yeah.
wonder what that balance is. And just for our listeners, like in Massachusetts, the average cost annually for a nursing home is about $130,000.
Right.
Like we had looked into that, but it depending, as you said, like waiting till later if you have diabetes or other certain conditions.
Right. And the way,
may
I'm sure
up.
you know this and many know, but the way it works with a nursing facility is if you go in, basically you're going to spend down your money and then you'll end up ultimately on, usually in Massachusetts, be Mass Health, but everything that you have has to go away before you get to that point.
Unless you have it in a trust.
Unless you have trust
Reference
can
our
protect-
earlier podcast on trust.
Trust
people.
can protect you. You're right. But
Yes.
but this can also protect you to some extent. too.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a million different insurance policies. There's actually some life insurance policies that include long-term
Yes.
care
Right.
riders.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if that's of interest to anybody, we'd be happy to shake the bushes and see what it would cost.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you offer a lot of personal insurance. We could do the whole podcast on that. But you also do business insurance too, and we'll move on a little bit, I think, and talk a bit about some of the other products you have. The business products is just
The list is
incredibly
incredible.
extensive. I
Right.
mean, I don't know if I want to read through all of it, but it's
I think
There's-
they can reference the website.
yeah. Look at the
because
website. There's
Your
probably
website's
like
very nice.
20 different products here.
Yeah.
For I think more than 20 actually.
No, there's a lot of them for
One's
sure.
business needs. So
And their website, just because we've been talking about it, is baycoastinsurance.com. Just for you to take a look at everything under the sun that you could ever
Right.
think of.
If
What's
you-
the crime
Yeah.
insurance?
So,
what is it? I'm sorry.
It's crime under commercial. They have
crime.
a crime
If someone
insurance.
like breaks in and
I don't know.
yes,
What is
not
that?
so much, but more, theft.
internal
Yeah.
theft from the company.
Yeah, it could be employee theft.
Ah,
For instance,
look at that.
my grandfather sold insurance, my father, my uncle sold insurance, and you could argue that 100 years ago, the number one primary concern, as we sit here in this beautiful old mill building, right,
Mhm.
was people's home or their business or their commercial building burning down.
Yeah.
And you could argue
Right.
that in today's society, with building code what it is, and fire sprinklers, what they are, and in today's day and age, the odds of that building burning down are less common, right?
Right.
But what you do see are, cyber liability or data breach claims or ransomware claims or employment practices liability claims or wrongful termination or employee theft, like you had referenced earlier. And the intricacies of these coverages and how they apply to everybody's different exposure is unique, right? Like we were talking about earlier, what keeps you up at night might not keep Chris up at night. And for good reason. The exposures might be very different. And the beauty of what we do is we can really custom a portfolio to meet anybody's needs, meet anybody's risk tolerance. More often than not, people haven't really had this discussion with their insurance agent.
Right.
Right.
And they don't necessarily understand what the exposure is
Right.
or what the
Mm.
solution is and what's out there. So,
That's a good way.
um, you know, my grandfather sold insurance. My father sold insurance. My uncle sold insurance. And you could argue that in today's society, with building code what it is, and fire sprinklers, what they are, and employment practices liability claims or wrongful termination or it's rewarding to sit down with somebody and to sort of roll our sleeves up together and to lean into the discussion and to learn more about their business and what their exposures are, and to see what we can create as far as a solution to meet their needs.
And every business has different needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's nice that you do that conversation, because if you went in with your business, you're going to be like, okay, these are the areas that you may want to think about protection.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be different from what my business is.
I think the cyber liability is really interesting. I mean, that's just such a huge problem now.
I don't underestimate it, Chris.
No,
I'm telling you, we see it on a daily basis, you know, and these cyber criminals and ransomware is something that we see a lot of actually these days. They can really put you out of business.
So how does that insurance work, Patrick?
Yeah, every policy is a little bit different, but typically there's a deductible of sorts, and often there's a waiting period, like you had referenced earlier. But it works just like that. You know, these insurance companies have a team of professionals that, if it goes down, if it happens, and these cyber criminals shut down your business,
Right.
they basically hold you ransom. They say, look, we're not going to allow you access to all of your data unless you pay us $50,000.
Oh my God.
The insurance
That's
companies
scary.
step in and find resolution.
Nice.
50,000 would probably be cheap from what they were often asking.
Right.
Depending on the
Yeah.
exposure. Yeah, we
Right.
see it across the board. We see
We've
it.
had, in Fall River itself, there's been some big data breaches where companies have gotten into trouble. And,
Absolutely.
you know, I know of one I won't mention, but they fortunately had insurance and did well. And but it was about from what I heard, it was about a 6-month or more recovery.
That's
to get
scary.
everything back.
It's not uncommon in today's society. It sort of brings me back to, it's why I mentioned earlier, 100 years ago, you know, the odds of a building burning down were much higher than they are today.
Right.
Today, I'd be a little bit more concerned with ransomware and with data breaches and cyber liability
Right.
than I would. And I'm not to diminish the importance of fire safety and you know,
Right,
the fact
of
that buildings
course.
do burn down. But it's a different world that we live in.
Yes.
I was reading recently about issues with AI, artificial intelligence, and how companies now are finding they have liability because they have an automated attendant that's giving advice that isn't necessarily appropriate for the company.
Good point.
And this is becoming an issue. So
Yeah.
I don't know if there's insurance for it, but it's interesting. I mean, how the world has evolved just in the last couple of years.
Aren't you intrigued with like Chat GPT? Can we say that?
Yeah.
Oh my
Sure,
God.
You
Yeah.
can ask Chat GPT just about
crazy.
anything.
Oh, yeah,
and,
it's
Journal.
yeah, and then you can say, well, tweak it and say it.
Yes, but people are onto that though too. I mean, one of my friends who's in leadership had sent out an AI generated email,
Yeah.
and they were like, her staff was like, "This isn't you."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I call
they're
people out
onto
all
it.
Oh yeah, no, you can
Yeah.
you can tell.
Yeah,
There's
definitely.
There's definitely a use for it. I mean, there's some. It's very interesting. It really is fascinating.
I mean, to not acknowledge the fact that AI and technology is going to play some sort of role in every industry
absolutely.
Scary.
that we have out
Is there insurance for that? For AI? It's
probably coming if there's
Misadventures,
not.
I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Misadventures.
There's
Well,
absolutely.
that's what it is, isn't
There's
it?
insurance for just
AI
about
misadventures,
anything.
Taylor
right?
Swift
You
misadventures.
can insure your furniture
like you're saying.
and the Red Sox series, so you can insure just about anything.
Yeah.
But I think that the secret is sort of to figure out how to work with technology and how to work with AI without compromising a data breach or cyber liability. And there's definitely going to be an opportunity to sort of find that middle
Oh,
ground.
this whole industry, it's evolving as we speak. It's
Yeah.
amazing. AI is really scary and fascinating at the same time.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
All right, so I have
Dude,
to
I
ask
gotta
you
ask
this.
one more thing for you. The drone insurance. I need to
Yes,
know
that
about
was
drone
my
liability.
question. I was just
Drone
gonna ask
liability.
that. Like,
right?
what
Yeah, I read your
is
mind.
that?
This is a good one. Yeah.
Tell us about drone
This is
liability.
applicable because, don't underestimate the privacy that you and I should expect.
Right.
Right. So if the guy down the street is flying a drone over your house
Mm-hmm.
and videotaping you and your family or your
Right.
children and your wife,
Creepy.
well then
Creepy neighbor.
that creates a liability exposure. So Yeah, you can buy insurance
Recording
for the liability
me
associated.
in the hot tub or something.
Yeah.
That would be bad.
Yeah.
Well, you have a little arsenal, so I don't think that drone would be lasting
There's a
too long.
liability exposure
Yeah.
there, and people should be aware of it. And that,
Oh my God.
Everything
I
has
know. I
different
saw that. I was like, what is drone liability?
also those drones can get pretty expensive.
Oh, yeah.
So
So it's actually insuring if someone does something with the drone that puts them at risk.
yeah, liability.
Invading someone's
and-
privacy or
Mhm.
whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating.
you
These
know,
things didn't exist 5 years ago, right? These products.
But again, it's technology evolving. Like a civil engineer in today's society needs to use a drone
Right,
to operate their business. So it's an
a lot of
necessity.
inspectors are using drones
Yeah,
now too to like check out people's roofs and stuff like
Absolutely.
that. Or roofs, how do they say it?
All right, here's a question I have. Someone has a retirement policy, and let's say it's a unprotected, non-qualified plan. So it's not a typical IRA, right?
Yeah.
Which has some protection to it. And of course, if the company goes out of business, they can lose that. It can go in, the company goes into receivership. It's at risk.
Yep.
Is there insurance for that?
For the non-qualified plan, you can buy insurance for just about everything, and
Okay.
I'm not an expert when it comes to I'm not a certified financial planner, so I don't want to come across as that.
Right.
But I think that what you're referring to is the necessity for the traditional plans, like a 401k, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Those businesses and those employees that are fortunate enough to have a 401k, the individual that makes the necessary decisions on behalf of that 401k, the fiduciary, is required to have an ERISA bond. And the ERISA bond requirements are 10% of plan assets. So again, that's one of those areas that's often overlooked, where the employer sets something up, early on when they're first setting their plan up, and then they don't maintain the necessary limits on the ERISA bond. So you're right that's a financial coverage, a bond that we can offer and we can help people out with. And it's often an area that's overlooked in businesses because they don't, frankly, keep up with it to suffice that 10%.
That was a good question.
Yeah, I just, I think about some of the things that have happened over the years. For example, I want to say it was American Airlines when they went out, or GM, and people lost their pensions.
Yeah.
And that was their entire retirement. Is there insurance to protect against those types of issues?
Imagine that's tough too, because it's like your whole portfolio. is
Can you,
based
as
in
an
company
individual,
stock.
say, I want to get an insurance policy in case my corporation goes out of business and I lose my pension or lose my non-qualified
Certain things are
retirement plan?
insurable and certain things
Right.
aren't. But what we were talking about earlier, as far as the necessity for this ERISA bond,
Yeah.
is the fiduciary who makes those decisions as far as how that money is invested and where it's invested,
Okay.
is liable
Right.
for
Right.
to all of those individuals.
Yeah. It'd have to be.
So they need to be protected.
Can you give us a definition? I know the other type of insurance that I wanted to talk about was the accident insurance. So what is accident insurance?
What is accident insurance? Well, insurance is designed to protect against the unexpected, right?
Right.
So I'm assuming that when you say what is accident insurance, it could be a million different things, right? It could be a liability situation. It could be a property.
I guess let me
accident.
clarify my question. So is that like if I have a heart attack or if I have like some medical crisis, is that, maybe I'm using the wrong term, is that considered like accident, like life and accident insurance? Like that?
I don't know if I've heard
Okay.
that term.
Yeah.
Did you hear that somewhere?
No, I'm thinking of the duck that goes around his little commercial.
All right. Short-term disability insurance.
Oh,
Okay, there we go.
Okay, there we go. Okay, I was trying
Yeah.
to figure out what you're getting
Yeah.
at.
Out with it.
Yeah.
I'm
Spit it out,
using the wrong
Nancy.
term. Sorry.
Yeah, so short-term disability insurance,
Okay.
Yeah.
we represent Aflac, we represent Colonial, we represent a number of different short-term disability insurance companies, and we have products to suit those needs.
Because
Absolutely.
those are pretty cool too. Like if you can like be covered for like a heart attack event or some other kind of event. I like that too.
So interestingly, you're one of the unique companies that also provide cannabis insurance or insurance to the cannabis industry,
Yeah.
which I think is fascinating because there's not a lot of people who do that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, and how did you get into that?
So, Baycoast Bank, as you know, is currently banking cannabis-related businesses and lending in that arena as
And
well.
one of the first ones to do it, really.
Yeah, and they did so not because of the opportunity to expand the business, but more of the requirement to meet the obligation for the communities that we serve, right? If nobody's banking the business, then that means that people are walking around with, tens of thousands of dollars in a backpack, and they're in front of you in the supermarket in a line, and that creates a public health hazard. Like, that's dangerous. You need to bank the industry if folks are, participating in commerce in the communities that we serve. So we did so because it was our responsibility for the communities that we serve. To that same end, the insurance agency is meeting the need of those businesses that are operating in the communities that we serve. So whether it's property insurance or liability insurance, and everybody's situation is a little bit different, whether they're a grower or a manufacturer or a distributor, everybody's situation is a little bit different, and there are products out there to meet the needs of everybody.
Yeah, I think it's just it's interesting because I know the bank was one of the first banks. Really, probably are they still the only bank in the area that is involved with?
They're the best.
They're the best. I know that. But did anyone else get involved in cannabis since then? But they were the only one at one point.
Yeah, there are a couple other institutions. I don't know them by name, but it's quality, not quantity. Right.
But it just seems very cutting edge to me, which I think is interesting.
And the market there, you can relate it right to liquor establishments, right? Whether it's a restaurant, a bar, or a liquor store, the development of dram shop liability, liquor liability over the course of the last 100 years has evolved, right? And we're really just in our infancy as it relates to cannabis-related businesses and the liability associated with cannabis-related businesses. We don't know a lot, right? So there are certain exposures, like property exposures, that there are limited standard markets that we can place that business in. And then a majority of the actual operating liability falls in the excess and surplus liabilities market.
Okay.
And that market particularly is a market that you have to be super keen to. The excess and surplus companies are notorious for specific exclusions on their policies. So you just have to be particularly careful in that market.
Okay, great. It's interesting. Yeah.
I have a question. I loved seeing this information on your portal. Because let me tell you, sometimes if you're digging for policy numbers or digging for this or digging for that, it's tough. And then if you have a policy, but like they're covered by someone else, you're you're drilling down a couple of levels. So can you talk a little bit about your portal?
So we have a portal, we have an app, and it's called My Partner 24/7.
Yep.
So I relate it to, it's like online banking for insurance. So it's an app that folks have on their phone, and they can click on it, and they can, if they need to get billing information on a particular policy, they can drill down and get the necessary information. If they need to make a claim, if they need to make a change to their policy, it's a portal. We would love to hear from our clients, but also a lot of folks like doing business. When and where they want to, and they might be up at 2:00 in the morning and say, "Oh, you know what? I want to check." So we have an app that folks can have on their smart device, and they can make all the necessary
Just makes it easy.
changes there.
That's nice. Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Yeah.
So and apps are. Everyone's moving into apps anyway over websites.
Yeah.
It's just so much easier.
Yeah.
That's nice though.
It's worked out well for
Patrick,
us.
with all the clients that you've helped over the years, do you have one in mind that you were like, thank God you were with us and we had this conversation and you had this type of insurance?
Yeah. I've had the unfortunate opportunity to walk through, several people's homes after they've lost everything that they own. I've had the unfortunate opportunity to walk through several commercial buildings that have had devastating fires or devastating, I've had roofs ripped off buildings, horrible plumbing situations where, these are multi-million-dollar claims, and it's comforting to be there with our clients, whether it's a personal client, and to be sort of their shoulder to cry on. And it's emotional. Like
Right. Of course.
these are real situations, and the responsibility that we have as professional insurance agents to do the right thing, to cross our T's and dot our I's, to make sure that we set the policy up in a way that's going to respond at the time of a claim. I once heard somebody say insurance is a lot like a parachute. You don't need it until you need it. But when you need it, it better work.
Right.
You don't miss it until you realize it's not there.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
Right. That's so true, huh?
So we, yes, we do have situations like that where, and they're heartbreaking.
Of course.
But it's also comforting to shepherd somebody through those situations, knowing that you've set up a policy and you've done the right thing, and that while it's going to take some time to rebuild and indemnify that person, that's what we're there for.
Yeah.
What's that process like? So say someone's home caught on fire, like they contact you, you're coming out, you're doing a site visit, but then like, what's usually like, just what's that process? Like, where do they stay? Like, what's that payment back process?
Every
Who
situation's
deals
a
with
little
that?
bit different.
Sure.
Policy they
Yeah,
use, right?
like the homeowner's policy typically has loss of use coverage on it.
Yeah.
So you would typically get a hotel immediately after. You would hire a remediation company to come in and board up the windows and start to clean everything up and start to inventory everything that's lost. You would then find temporary housing, whether it's renting a place on Airbnb, or often folks have trailers come right to the home so that they
Is
can.
that dependent too on the type of policy you get, whether that's covered or not?
Yeah, and you can't paint a broad brush as far as
Right.
everybody's policy is a little bit different.
Yeah. Because I've seen those different things too. I've seen like the big home trailer out front while they're
Right.
working on the house, or otherwise, like you said, they're staying in like a nice hotel.
We have a dedicated claims department at Baycoast Insurance that really shepherds people through those situations with compassion.
So nice.
Because
you need
it's
some
emotional.
hand holding.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, losing your house and all your photos and all your
Your
personal,
personal
good God,
items.
can't imagine.
Yeah.
I was just looking through all of the organizations I guess you've partnered with, or I'm not sure if these are companies that you've actually acquired over the years, but it's a huge list.
Yeah.
Some of these, I mean, this was my first insurance company, Hassey Sullivan and Brault.
That's great.
Then Ernie Miser, I knew Ernie well, and
God
I,
rest his soul.
I had
Yeah.
been, my
And it's
policies
like
had
I
been
looked
with
through
him
this,
at one
it's just
time. It's like a lot of well-known insurance.
Well-known
Leanne
associates,
God
yeah.
rest his soul. Burt Patinaud.
Yeah.
Tony Alberto. I still see Tony regularly.
Yeah.
Tiverton Insurance. We acquired.
Oh, EP Tremblay and Sons. I didn't
Yeah,
know
Mark.
you had them too.
Mark's still operating his accounting and financial advisory.
Yeah, he's right next to me
He's a
actually.
great guy.
Yeah.
And you were Partners Insurance until this year, January, when you changed the name to Baycoast. And,
Yeah, and it's it was a tough Band-Aid to rip off, but I'm so glad that we did. And we were talking
Yeah.
about that earlier as far as like we're proud to represent Baycoast. And for 20 years we didn't share the same name. Partners was a great description of what we were. We're partners with the clients that we represent. We're
Yes.
partners with our team, our employees. We're partners with the companies that we represent, the communities that we work in. But it's not who we are. We're Baycoast.
Great way of explaining it.
So
There's separate organizations, though, the insurance and the bank? Or
no, they see that's the misconception. The insurance
Okay.
agency has been owned by the bank since inception for the last 20 years, since the passage of Graham-Leach-Biley, when the bank, then Citizens Union Savings Bank, bought their first insurance agency, and that was the Hassey Sullivan Brault Insurance
Okay.
Agency that you'd referenced earlier.
Right.
And you could argue that 20 years ago, maybe the consumer had some trepidation doing their banking and their insurance in the same institution.
Mm-hmm.
But in today's day and age, I don't think that the
No.
consumer has any hesitation.
No,
to do their
Like
banking.
one-stop shopping. That's great.
Yeah, it's a
Right.
different world.
So
Nice.
I can't believe we've been speaking about for about an hour already.
My God, I could just do a whole
mean-
separate podcast on just like the life insurance and personal insurance.
We didn't even really get to any great extent into the commercial insurance. We'll have to have a part 2.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Because has it been an hour already?
Yes.
It's
It's
right?
past 6. Yeah.
been an
It's
hour,
been
so
crazy.
amazing. So, anything you want to leave our audience?
I really appreciate you
comments
guys
before-
having me. I appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit about what we do at Baycoast Insurance. Hopefully you understood, or hopefully it came through how passionate we are about insurance, how passionate we are about doing the right thing. So if anybody's out there that would ever like to contact us, we would be honored to get to know you and see what we could do to help.
And it sounds like it's very individualized, which I really liked.
Yeah.
So how do they contact?
They can go on our website, baycoastinsurance.com. They could give us a call at 508-491-3100. We're pretty easy to find in today's day and age.
Okay, great. So as just mentioned, please visit baycoastinsurance.com to learn more about the insurance offerings. You can also call 508-491-3100. And a member of their team will be happy to assist you. Thank you for listening to our show. And if you'd like to become a sponsor, please contact us at 774-319-4230. Special thanks to Ron Gamache for our intro music. Primacare, your trusted medical providers in southeastern New England. BioSkills of Northeast for producing our show and available to produce your show by calling 774-301-8811, and they do a great job. And I would highly recommend, if anyone is interested in having a podcast, that you give them a call. It's a fabulous studio. Baycoast Bank is just right for all of your financial needs. Visit baycoast.bank or call 508-678-7641 to learn more. Duncan Hearing Healthcare you can trust, with sites in Fall River, Dartmouth, Falmouth, and Centerville. For more information, visit their website, duncanhearing.com. And thank you very much for being on our show. We greatly appreciate it. I learned a lot. I'm sure Nancy
did
Thank you,
too.
Nancy.
Yeah,
I'm sure our audience learned a lot too. It was really a great conversation. We'll have you back for part 2 at some
I
point.
appreciate you having me.
And thanks everyone out there for listening to us. We really appreciate your support. It's what keeps us going in doing this.
Definitely.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.